We're so excited to have you. Today, we are going to talk about upgrade your brain, change your life. What does that mean? Just a quick intro of myself. I'm the CEO of Quick Learning, and we're here to help you learn quickly. I've been doing this work with Jim for the past 18 years or so. It's been a long time. And I was where you were. I was one of the quick learning students long, long time ago. And what I've learned back then, it literally changed my life. And yeah, and the question that I asked myself when I first learned about this work, it's why aren't we taught this in school? Because it would have helped me tremendously when I was going to school. But not only that, it changed my life even long after the school's over. And now, we've been doing this work together for a long time because it really started from the passion because I know what it could do, not only for me, but we've seen thousands of students from around the world changing their lives by learning how their minds work. And this goes far beyond just memory, speed reading, focus, creative thinking. Because when you know how your mind works, you can work your mind. And what does that mean? When you know and trust your mind, you cultivate this confidence that you are capable of solving any problem. And when you can come from that level of confidence, you literally become unshakable. And not only unshakable, but you become force of nature. And we're so excited to share this framework with you. We've been sharing a lot of different mental models and framework with our community for many, many years. And so we're always looking to upgrade and create new layers of learning. And today we're excited to share the new Limitless loop and how you can really learn, not only learning faster, but how to integrate, take action, and all of that. And who's a better person to go through this framework than our amazing Jim Kwik, who's, truly one of the best teachers I know. He's really a great coach, not only from the materials that he knows and all the work that he's done, he really makes, all the concepts very simple, simple for anyone to understand and apply, which is important. That's why, we got to work with a lot of amazing people over the years, helping people no matter where they're starting from, where they're at, to achieve the next level of performance, mental performance, and ultimately becoming the best version of themselves. So we're super excited to share this next hour with you, sharing this limitless loop framework. And before we do that, I want to bring on Jim on here today. So Jim,
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you. What an honor that you're sharing time with us today. I want to give my limitless thanks to Alexis, who's we've had the opportunity to work together for 18 years, and really, I feel like I do the easy part. Um, there's a lot of moving parts to create this experience and the education and empowerment. So she really is the mind and a big part of the heart behind what we do.
Thank
Let's
you.
jump right into it, please. Encourage you to take some notes. I'm going to share something I've never taught before. And it's not in the books or podcasts or even courses. And I hope it serves you. I'm going to share with you. Initially, it was five things that you signed up for, kind of science-based ways of creating momentum in your life. And but I am kind of I want to over deliver for you, so we're going to make it nine. Um, You will be able to remember it, of course, because I'm going to make it a very simple acronym. And my main goal here is that you take some kind of action. I mean, we've all the experience where we learn something and we don't apply it. I don't want this um, to be this case because I know, not only what we're sharing, but I also know what's inside of you, which is this limitless potential. I want to say a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube. I just opened up the chat there, so welcome to the over 1,000 people who are engaged there, and I'm reading very fast reader, reading all the comments, and also here on Zoom and wherever you're consuming this as well. So let's get started, please. And I appreciate all the love, and we are going to continue to do this. We have another one coming up in October. If you found this session, very very valuable, but our goal is to just whether you've been with us for one day or one decade, to serve you. Now, you've heard me say that your brain is the most powerful supercomputer on the planet, and that the problem is that it doesn't come with an owner's manual. So today, I want to change that. You know my story, so I'm not going to go into it. But the 60 seconds, just for context, if we're new friends, is when I was 5 years old. I had a bad accident, rushed to the emergency room. I had a traumatic brain injury, and I had these migraines issues, focus issues, memory issues. And I was kind of learning challenged, learning disabled. I had all the labels. They call me the boy with the broken brain, and that was a challenge. And for a long time, I believed it. But then as I went through life, especially at that tender age, for about a decade and a half, I realized that your brain is not fixed like your shoe size. It's actually very flexible. It's fragile, but it's very resilient. It's actually neuroplastic. And we're going to talk about what that means today in terms of rewiring your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, even your feelings, because every single one of us has the ability, regardless of the age and stage of life, to rewire, reprogram, and reimagine really what's possible, And at the time we're doing this live, I'm in my 50s and I measure, a lot of things, and I'm acutely sensitive to where my mind is at any given time just because of the training that I've had in my career over the past 34 years as a learning specialist, as a brain coach. And I realized that we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities, because we aren't given that owner's manual, if you will, that, every single one of us, regardless of age and stage, can get better. And that's a good part. So I'm reading faster than I ever have. My memory is sharper than it's ever been. Same with my level of focus, while my responsibilities have grown with the responsibility of, what we do as our mission, I two young children, and just as we expand, we could take on more. And so, what I want to share with you today is just one idea, and I call it the limitless loop. And a limitless is an acronym, and I know I use limitless for productivity, for mind management, and other things. I want you to just write down the word limitless, and I'm going to give you the 9 keys, and then we'll do some case studies. Some like how to apply it towards focus, towards memory, towards optimizing your brain energy. So Limitless has 9 letters. So these are your 9 steps, and they they are actually very meant to be done in syntax. Syntax is like the order, just like a phone number. If there's 7 or 8 digits, you could have the same digits, but change the order of those, and you're not going to get the same result, right? So I'm going to give you 9. They can be done in parallel, and even if you don't do all of them, doing some of them right now will make a bigger difference than not doing any of them. Because I find that a lot of what we do is unconscious, right? We don't realize. Duke University said 40% of our behavior daily is habitual. So we're not even aware that we're doing it. So I'm going to create kind of like a flywheel of these 9 steps that you could use over and over again, and you create momentum. You become more, as Alexa said, more unstoppable, not just learning more, but you're executing a level that's 10x higher than maybe even the smartest person in a room because you have a conscious blueprint and a plan. All right. So that sound good? I love the comments. I'm tuning in from New York. Where is everybody here? I see like a whole thing going on YouTube. Um, so just a quick show of hands if you're joining us here live, or I could see you. And be honest, you could put in the chat. Going back to my original question, have you ever bought a book or enrolled in a course, maybe attended a conference, and you didn't apply most of what you learned, right? And look at this. Yes, me. I guess. So it's good to know as a community that you're not alone, first of all. Um, so, because I find that, it gives you a little grace knowing that you're not the only one going through that challenge. Because today we're going to fix it, because information without execution or implementation is like a book that you never even open, right? It has zero value. Or even the person that reads that book is no better off if they don't apply something to somebody who is illiterate, who couldn't read the book, to begin with. So this is your opportunity right now to sit the way you'd be sitting if you're very focused, right? My joke is always like, why do you even have to change, right? But your physiology affects your psychology. So lean in, take notes, participate when I ask questions here, because that's the interactive part. That's where kind of a really, and they say neurons that fire together, they wire together. It's your engagement is really what's going to determine your execution. Because when you leave here, you'll have with these 9 steps, almost like a new operating system for your mind. For me, it's like a 10x meta learning engine. And so let's jump in. This is how I approach something. So I want everyone to think about a subject or skill you want to improve or learn or even master. We know that the faster you learn, the faster you earn. We posted on social media today this quote from the head of DeepMind over at Google saying, the number one crucial skill to master in the age of artificial intelligence is what? Many of you saw this because it was posted everywhere. What is the one skill that must be mastered and attained, developed, enhanced in the age of AI? Does anyone know? You could put it in the chat as you look at our Instagram. It's learning how to learn, right? Learning how to learn. And so that's where we're preeminent, right? This is where we spent decades focused on. So the acronym Limitless is starts with L, which is learn. All right. So stage one is learn, but here's the truth. Most of us never learn how to learn, right? Your brain has something called working memory. Think of it like mental post-it notes, but you can only hold that thing, only about, they say 7 things at once. There's a study done at Harvard by George Miller called 7 ± 2. And that's how much we could hold in our conscious kind of working memory at any given time. That's why a lot of phone numbers are 7 digits, right? 7 ± 2. So so it's 5. 7 - 2 is 5. 7 + 2 is 9, about 5 to 9 bits of information. So one thing you could do to learn something faster is to break things down. And some of the things I'm going to mention, you've heard me say before. Maybe I'll say it in a different way, or maybe you're in a time in your life where you're like, how do I apply this? So it's called chunking. We chunk information. Instead of looking at a like 7 digit phone number, you could break them into 3 sets, and that makes it easier to digest. It's like hacking your brain's mental bandwidth if you can only focus on a certain amount of things. But there's really more, right? You don't just learn. Alexis and I geek out about this a lot. You don't just learn with your head. You learn with your entire body, which includes your emotions and your environment. Just think about that. It's not just what's going on up here, it's also going on here, your heart, and also what you're surrounded by. And that's why I always say that, state is more important than strategy. Your emotional state is more important than the actual strategy. Because if you don't feel it, you're not going to do it. And when you do feel something when you're learning, you're more likely to encode it and retain it better. You all know this, right? Maybe it's a song that you haven't heard in a while that could take you back to when you're in high school. Maybe it's a food or fragrance that puts you in state and you remember things like when you were a child. So if you learn something in a bored, distracted, exhausted, tired state, nothing sticks. And I'm saying what you already know. So knowing that, how does it change your behavior? Can you at will get more curious? Can you get more excited? Can you get more engaged? And that will help you learn faster. Even right now, do this check in with yourself, check your body, and just on a scale of 0 to 10, like quantify it. How excited or how much energy do you feel right now on a scale of 0 to 10? And if you're honest, put it in, if you're willing to, put it in the chat. Like, if there was an emotional gauge, right? Like a dashboard, and it was 0 to 10, 10 being like just feel actually unstoppable, so much vitality. And then I'm seeing like a six, seven, eight, nines. And then ask yourself, what do I need to do to make it just 2 points more? If you're a six, what do you need to do either in your mind, your psychology, or your physiology to make it an eight? You don't have to jump from a four to a 10, but how can you elevate it from a four to a six? And that's not a 2 point jump. That's an exponential jump. So every single jump is kind of like almost like adding a zero to how you're encoding it. So never learn something in a bored state, right? You're all familiar with the four keys to learning faster, right? FAST. You forget what you know, so you can learn something new. You forget about distractions, you could focus. The A is being active, which is what I'm asking you to do to participate. So it's not just a lecture. The S is the state that we're talking about right now. You manage your emotions, you manage your energy, and that you don't have emotions, you don't have energy. It's not a noun, it's a verb. So, how do you create more energy? How do you create more motion? And often it's through motion, right? Right? Motion leads to emotion. And then finally, the last T, as many of you know, you can put it in the chats. What does T stand for in FAST for our, kind of our longtime students and clients? Teach, right? When you teach it, you get to learn it twice. And so I always learn something with the intention of teaching somebody else because it forces me to focus, forces me to take better notes, forces me to ask better questions. And again, they call it the explanation effect. When you learn to explain, you learn it better. So even if we talk about different facts of the brain, your job is in with your partner, if you're watching this with a friend or a family member, or maybe you want to rewatch this with a teammate. When you pair up in exercise, I'm not going to take the time here because I have a lot to kind of go through. Just takes like 60 seconds to share something that you learned, right? If I was to say your brain is like 2% of your body weight, and you need to remember that, but it consumes 20% of the energy. And one of the important things you could do, water fuels your brain. You have to hydrate. If you're just 2% dehydrated, it's going to affect your cognitive health and performance. If I was to say another fact like sleep helps you consolidate, your short to long-term memory, or movement boosts learning, dance uh, Alexis and I had the opportunity to be at the premiere of Dancing with the Stars, um, and many use like in Limitless, Jules and Derek Huff, if you know that these names they endorse Limitless, but we're talking about dancing in the brain. That learning to dance and dancing on a regular could reduce dementia risks by more than 60%, and that's more than any other activity which I find is just something, it doesn't have to be choreographed dance, it's just that movement, right? Because novelty triggers neuroplasticity. And as your body moves, your brain grooves. And I love how everyone's supporting each other. Everyone has questions, and as somebody else who knows the answer is answering, that's through teaching. All right. So just remember, you know, how many of you remembered more than once who taught you something, right? It's almost like a protege effect. If you want to learn something, teach it to somebody else. All right, let's keep on going. Oh, wow, we're just over 1,500 people on YouTube alone. Number two is implementation, right? You learn something to apply it. And the truth is all the courses and speeches and podcasts, none of it works unless we work. And I have a belief that we can't be upset by the results we didn't get from the work we didn't do. And it's hard sometimes to implement. And I'll give you some strategies on how to take action. But that's stage two. You want to think like a person of action, and you want to act like a person of thought, because a lot of people have a lot of ideas. I mean, they're very inexpensive, but people actually follow through and implement it. That's where it's better well done than well said, And so, like most people fall talking about memory, the forgetting curve. When you hear something once, like here, after 48 hours, you forget what percentage. What's the research say? On average, you forget. How much do you forget? What percentage after just hearing something once after 2 days? 80%. 80%. And so, what helps you mitigate that? Application. All right. How do you count? And that's one of my dominant questions I ask all the time. How can I use this? How can I use this? Why must I use this? When will I use this? Um, because I never want to learn something. I think for every hour you spend learning something, we should spend an equal hour applying it as a general rule, right? I just feel like it puts you in that action mindset because a lot of people could quote a lot of other experts and everything else, but if their life is not reflecting that, are they doing it, right? You can't learn to ride a bicycle by just reading a book, right? Or you could read a book on push-ups, but if you're not doing those push-ups, you don't get the results, right? Even when I train actors, in Hollywood and memorize scripts, I let them, read once and then they walk away and then they have to act it out, right? Because they have to apply what they just learned. And that's so simple. So your challenge over the next 24 hours, because I make it a rule, I make everything like a rule, 24-hour rule. What's one thing you could apply within 24 hours? And also, who's one person that I could teach this to? And just reflect on this. And then write it down. My challenge is if you just take lots of notes, how many of you just taken a lot of notes and they're all over the place, notebooks everywhere? But when's the last time you reviewed it, much less applied it? So write down one thing that you've learned so far, and then write how you're going to apply it within 24 hours. And then, share it with one person, teach it to somebody that you care about. And that's where you're taking information, turn action. Uh, let's go to number three. And I know we're going to go deeper. Uh, also with the Q&A. So stage three, the M in Limitless is to measure. All right. So stage three is you need to measure. You've all heard the phrase, in order to be able to manage something, you have to be able to measure it, right? Um, it's kind of like you can't improve what you don't measure. There's a lot of work on deliberate practice out there. Many of you are familiar with Anders Ericsson, who wrote a book called Peak, and the research on deliberate practice. And this is where experts they really track the progress in what we call using feedback loops, right? That there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. And feedback is the breakfast of champions, right? I mean, just think about Olympic athletes. Every movement is measured. And then what do they do with that information? They adjust, right? Same with your learning. So if you were to measure something, and the great thing about what we teach, many of you have gone through, how many of you have gone through our reading program or speed reading program or our memory improvement program or our productivity program or focus program or student success program? Like everything is measurable. You can measure your reading speed. You can measure your reading comprehension. You can measure your ability. You could, in the program, we give you 20 words to memorize, and you have a before, and then we teach you something, and how many you remember afterwards. Same with names and faces, or foreign languages, or, random words or numbers. You can measure it before and after. Right. And that's the great thing about this. You could see your progress where when people go through our reading program and they on average triple their reading speed with better comprehension, it's very trackable. So my suggestion for you for this stage is track what matters to you at least weekly, because what gets measured gets managed, and what you manage also improves. So if you had a scorecard, you could track like your learning reps like you do like gym reps, if that makes sense. The same as your body, you can measure your body mass index. You can measure your weight, your level, your HRV, your heart rate. You can measure things also for your mind. Stage four, because I want to make sure I get through all of these, is the power of your imagination. All right. So the I in Limitless stands for imagination. And so we went from measuring let me spell this right. All right, imagination. Um, Einstein said imagination is more powerful than knowledge. Like, let that sink in. Imagination is more powerful than knowledge, because knowledge is what is, right? And but the half-life of that is getting shorter and shorter, meaning it information that's accurate now is not accurate, uh, days or weeks or months later, right? Because we get new information. So imagination, it's interesting when you recall a memory about six specific brain regions are engaged. When you imagine something, there's upwards of 10 or 11. That's the power of your imagination. Visualizing, especially, it's really easy for you, for those of you who've gone through our assessment, dolphins, they have great creativity, but creativity is a skill you can build. So this is where I find like creativity is like imagination applied, right? Or that innovation is imagination applied. There's something in neuroscience called the default mode network. You don't have to know what this is, but default mode network, this is a DMN. It lights up when you daydream. It lights up when you do brainstorming. It's really your imagination network. And so Einstein didn't discover relativity by just grinding on numbers. He would imagine himself sitting on a beam of light, heading towards a clock, and imagine what that clock would look like when he was on a beam of light, right? He would do these thought experiments. And, I feel like imagination is mental rehearsal. And sometimes your mind doesn't know the difference between something you vividly imagine and something that's real. So if you're applying this towards, again, I asked you in the beginning, come up with a subject or skill that you're applying these 9 steps to. How can you use your imagination to do mental reps? They've done studies done at University of Chicago where they'll take 3 groups of people, A, B, C, and they'll put them on a basketball court and have them do free throws, and then they'll measure, right? In order to manage it, you measure it, see how well they did. And then they said, okay, group A, I want you to practice doing these free throws on the basketball court 1 hour a day for the next 30 days. Group B, no practice. Don't touch a ball, don't do anything. And then group C, we want you to practice, but just practice in your imagination. Practice for an hour a day, successfully putting the ball in the hoop. And they followed up 30 days later, put them back on the court and measure their progress. Group A, who did an hour of physical training every single day, improved 24%. Group B, who didn't do anything, didn't improve at all, right? No practice, no progress. Group C, many of you know, improved 23%, just 1% less than the people actually went outside, got all dressed up, practiced physically. And that's the power of your mind. On our podcast, we had Dr. Ellen Langer talking about the counterclockwise effect, which is a study done at Harvard where they took, 8 gentlemen and put them in a location, and they were in their 70s or seniors, and they put them in the location and they decorated it as if it was 20 years earlier. The media, the television, the newspapers, and after just 7 days, they came out and they measured before and after. They had better focus, better memory. They were stronger. Their eyesight was better after just 7 days of pretending. Their only instruction was act as if you're 20 years younger, right? And that's the power of your thoughts, right? Because all behavior is belief driven. And so we're grossly underestimating the power of our minds, especially in the area of imagination. And this is something that we're going to go into in depth. Many of you joining us for our annual brain performance conference called Limitless Live. And we have some of the most amazing experts on how to rewire your brain for limiting that has limiting thoughts or beliefs about yourself, and how you use imagination. Like we have Jamie Kern Lima coming in to speak about worthy in a different way. She was working as a waitress at Denny's, and she eventually built, this amazing brand that she sold to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion. But it was her imagination of feeling that she was worth that, and she's going to go walk through her process. We have the creator of MacGyver, for those of you who grew up when I grew up, and it's going to talk about how to solve problems using the power of your imagination when you have very limited resources. And so imagination is something we're going to go deep. Um, Joe Dispenza, who's mentioned here, I'm a fan of. I remember years ago, came through one of my memory trainings because we were talking about memory and power of imagination. And what if you could remember something in the future as well as something that happened to you in the past? Like, was that real? Alexis and I recently, last month, spent 7 days at one of his retreats, and that's the power of when you have coherence between your mind and your heart, right? So that your mind puts it out there, and your heart already has gratitude. And I think gratitude is the memory, of your heart. if you will, and the connections and HRV and this coherence and frequency that you put out. So it's kind of like your mind puts it out there as an attractor or magnet, and then you pull it back as if it's real and it's already happened. You feel an immense amount of gratitude. That's just even one example. So that is four. The rest I'm going to go through rather quickly, because I'm sure there are some things that people are asking about this. Um, Stage five is the T in Limitless. And what I would say is test, test. And so, what do I mean by this? I mean that testing in school, and it's interesting, right? You learn the lesson and then you're tested on you're quizzed or you have the test in school, when often life is the opposite. Often you're tested and then you learn a lesson. And I find that very interesting. But there is something called the testing effect, which shows that we retain more when we actively try to recall things, even more than rereading something. So when students are tested reading something twice, like reading it and then rereading it, or reading it and then asking questions about what they just read, that retrieval is even more powerful than review. Okay, so I feel like we don't know it unless we could teach it, but when you are forced to pull information out, right, then how well do you really know it? Like a lot of people, they aren't forgetting something. Like they they see someone's face, and it's not like they're even remembering the face. They recognize the face, right? And so there's a difference between recognizing something that you've seen before and actually reviewing and retrieving it out, if that makes sense. So the testing effect is this quick retrieval training that if you learn to ask yourself questions about what you just learned, then it forces you to really understand it. And it activates part of your brain, your nervous system called the RAS, your reticular activating system, which shines a spotlight on what you know and what you don't know. So medical students, they don't just read. What do? They drill all these practice questions, and then this is how you really bulletproof your knowledge base. So if you could come up with 10 questions from today and even pair up with someone else in the community or somebody else that's watching this or someone in your family and you quiz each other with no notes, you'll know how much you really retained. And so retrieval practice is very important. Um, the act of retrieving mode, it makes things stick. So every test, it strengthens the neural pathways. So I wouldn't say to be fearful of testing. Sometimes if I said like, okay, let's do a quiz, then people freeze up. But you look at it as like a puzzle that you want to be able to solve. And if you ask more questions, you get more answers. All right, home stretch. I'm trying, and as Alexis mentioned, we've been traveling the past couple of weeks, and I've been doing a lot of speaking and a lot of media, talking about this upcoming event. And my voice is a little bit strained, but I really want to make sure I go, even if I lose it at the end. I think it's time well spent. Six is leveling up, which all of you want to do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be attracted to this community or this work. You want to level up, right? I think that we're all on this quest to reveal and realize our fullest potential. Um, but but what does leveling up mean? At this event, we are going to address the states of flow. And flow happens when challenge meets skill, right? Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote books and did a lot of research. So has Stephen Kotler, who spoke at a lot of our events in the past. But if let's say you have a challenge is too high and your skill is too low, then you're going to be stressed and have anxiety. But if you reverse it and the challenge is too low and your skill is too high, you're going to be bored. So you're not going to get into flow. So if it's too hard, you have anxiety, and if it's too easy, you're just bored. And so the key, though, is to create that capability and that challenge, and so it forces you to be engaged, right? Video games do this very, very well with people who play video games. They keep it addicting or addictive because of the scale of difficulty, right? You keep on having to level up your skills, your experience and then you have bigger bosses that you need to be able to, or dragons you need to slay. I would say that life could be a video game, and obstacles can make you bitter or they can make you better. And that's a difference. And we're going to talk about this at the event, cognitive anti-fragility, where cognitive resilience is bouncing back, getting back to baseline. Something happens and you're able to get back to baseline where you were. Cognitive anti-fragility for me is not just bouncing back, but bouncing forward. If you think about the concepts of like hormesis, right? Where intermittent fasting, cold heat exposure, exercise, there's a little bit of a stressor there that forces you to get stronger, right? Um, Neuroplasticity is the same way, some kind of novelty that forces you to make new connections, to grow. Even in your immune system, when children are exposed to more bacteria, then potentially their immune system could be stronger, right? Because they had other challenges that they had to get stronger. That's what I mean about being cognitive. The same principles there apply for your cognitive strength, your cognitive resilience, and to be more anti-fragile mentally, right? But if that's the case, you could look at life like a video game. Like, what if life was a game that was a mental model that you're looking things through? So you could pick a skill in that game that let's say you're decent at, but write one way that you could level up. How can you stretch it and get 10% better? And in order to get 10% better, I think you have to level up and make it 10% more difficult, right? Like even when I was learning the memory training years ago, I would try to remember things not under ideal situations where I have like you know, perfect silence, non-distracted and everything, or wearing like noise canceling headphones. I would learn with all kinds of distractions because I know if I could do that while there's lots of noise and everywhere where I was training, and I could definitely do that on stage or in a classroom, right? You learn under difficult situations. They say there's a phrase in training that the more you sweat, the less you bleed. And I think you get the idea in terms of the power of preparation and challenging yourself. There's a whole concept in Japanese culture called Kaizen, right? Tony Robbins calls it kanai, constant, never-ending improvement. This idea that who we had on the podcast, the author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, says 1% better a day. And 1% better a day over the course of a year is 37 times growth. Just think about that. Just getting better, happier 1% a day, reading 1% better 1% a day, memory 1% a day, compounds, consistency compounds. All right, number seven, I think, is the letter E. I use the word expand. So expand. What do I mean by this? So conversations that Alexis and I have often have to do with cross-pollination, if that makes sense. That if you there's a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution that says that if the future belongs to creators, which I believe much in. The future belongs to creators, as opposed to just consumers, right? That a lot of innovation comes from people outside of an industry because it takes somebody on the outside to look at the problem or the solution differently, right? Because if you're just in the industry, we have the same learned helplessness about what's possible, but it takes somebody from the outside to look in, to ask a new question. And so there's this cross-domain transfer. Right. Like people ask me all the time, is it better to be a generalist or is it better to be a specialist? Is that a fair question? Like, what would you say? Is it better to be a generalist or a specialist? Um, and what I would say, and this could be a whole training onto its own, it's kind of like if you see the letter T, that going horizontal on the top of the T is like a generalist, has broad-based knowledge about a lot of things. And then the T, the line going down vertically, is the depth of knowledge. And there's pros and cons for certainly that we could talk about. I mean, some of the obvious things is a generalist tends to have more perspective, right? Has more source in information, if you will, about a lot of different things. But a specialist has a level of mastery over a subject, and especially if that domain is a needle mover, like learning how to learn, right? Because then you can learn all this other stuff a lot easier and faster. And so, if I was going for brain surgery, I'd want that doctor to be a specialist, right? That would make sense. It's interesting because a lot of Nobel laureates actually, a lot of them had like over, I think this is, don't quote me on this, but like 22 times more creative hobbies. Isn't that interesting? Like even thinking about like Leonardo da Vinci or somebody, 22 times more creative pursuits. And maybe it's engaging a different part of their brain, or maybe it's giving them like all this different perspective, on something that could be useful also as well. So I feel like there's a lot of trends going on, and we're going to talk about, we have the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine coming to speak at Limitless Live, going to talk about the future and how leaders and entrepreneurs are going to be able to navigate through that change. But part of it is expanding your knowledge base. Okay. So what I would say in terms of something you could do, because coming back to applications, pick one skill. And then what if you could apply it to three different areas? Maybe you're applying it. We have a book club where we do also do live coaching called Quick Success. You can find out about quicksuccess.com. It's the only place where I do these live trainings, and we have a lot of Quick Success members here. And today we had in book club, we're reading The Five Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. And we're talking about the different forms of wealth and how you could build it. And really, what if you were to take the skill that you want to learn, how would you apply it towards your career, towards your health, towards your relationships, the other types of wealth? And that'd be a nice way of making something rewarding to you and relevant to you, because you're definitely going to learn it better if you have a reason, because without reasons, you won't get the rewards or really the result. I think the number one skill, again, is learning how to learn, especially in the world of AI, being able to be curious, see things from different perspectives, have empathy, and as you apply and create it also as well. And we were with Ray Kurzweil in as part of our trip to Las Vegas, and people were asking questions, and I was thinking, because I'm going to grab them at the end and talk about not just the future of AI and nanotechnology and how people are melding into this singularity, but I was also curious about some of the drawbacks, not also to human motivation and purpose, right? Like when everything is given to you and you know everything here, where does motivation and purpose and meaning come in, as we're on this process, or what makes us really truly human. And that could be another conversation. All right. Finally, 8 and 9. Eight is so it's the two S's. So say S. Let's use the word sustain. So stage 8 is sustain, meaning learning isn't just about input, it's about your recovery, right? Science shows that your brain, it follows these ultradian rhythms, these 90-minute bouts of focus, and then you need to take a break. I call them brain breaks, but it's like your recovery. So learning isn't, you can't just learn all the time. You need to take these pit stops to consolidate your learning, to be able to rehearse your learning also. Even when you learn something and you take a nap, you're actually reviewing what you just learned backwards, right? And so you have this amazing amount of recall that comes from disconnecting to reconnecting to what you just learned. All right. So rest for me is not rest. It's part of the work. And you should prioritize your rest. And I'm not going to take time to talk about how to optimize your sleep and how to manage your stress and everything else, because you know this, right? Even the power in the mornings for our event at 7 a.m., we're gonna have an activity, and some of them be breath work, some would be new brain exercises, for the whole group at Limitless Live. But breath is it's the conduit between your autonomic, and your more conscious. level, right? That the breath is the one thing that you do unconsciously, but you could also control it consciously. And so that's like the bridging station for your non-conscious, your unconscious mind. And so what I would say is just prioritize your rest. And so that's sustain. And then finally, the last S we already covered, and I'd love for you to do with what we shared today is exactly that. Is stage 9 is remember to share. All right. When you teach others, you get to learn it twice. The whole protege effect, and I would say that pair up with someone else in the community or somebody else that you care about and, take any stage of the limitless loop and teach it. Even if it's just 60 seconds, how much do you remember right now as active recall? And I went through it fast, but with a little bit of review, you should remember the 9 steps, right? And any ones that you don't, the fact that you went there to try to recall it shows you where you need to focus on, and then you could review it again, and then it becomes ingrained. I think that's one of the fastest ways to encode a new subject or skill. And uh, and those are the 9 steps. I can't make it any more difficult than that, or even any more simpler than that. Um, and I wanted to make sure that was this useful conversation. I don't know many places, excuse my voice, where we're having these conversations about your potential, where people are well, like for the team, and I think I speak for Alexis and the team, like our mission is really to help people to know their brain. Right. And I think feel like your confidence improves just so much if you understand how magnificent the superpower is. And we want you to know your brain. We want you to start trusting your brain, so you can love your brain more. And most of all, we want you to be able to use it. And so those are 9 things. If there
Thank
was a
you.
10th, it would be like integration, but that I know we're going to focus on, at the event, 3 days deep immersion, no distractions. That's my little plug for this event. I don't want to super sell it, but we put together, Alexis and I, we have quite a network, and dozens of people want to speak at this event, but we've hand chosen 20 of people that I've learned from, that whose research and work has touched my life. And we want to put them all together. 3 days. We have this amazing wellness 5-star resort. So it'll be in a very energetic and healthy environment. And, just like with the books and the courses, we created them as things that we wish we had when we started on this path, or even our supplements, like this is the supplement I wish I had. For those of you who are taking our Quick Mind nootropic, this is the event I wish that I could have. And I spend my life at events. I've done over 1,700 presentations at other conferences and companies, because I kind of, you don't have to be a genius to see like there's certain things that make some spectacular, and really that transforms your mind and your life.
Thank you. And speaking of sharing, this is why we love to, share these frameworks with our community. And we're always thinking of better ways for people to learn faster, easier, and more importantly, effective. I think that's really what distinguishes a lot of what we do because we care about results and actually like, getting to a point where you can not only improve in your learning, but your life. I did have a question though, and I love this process. I love the limitless loop, but I see often people get stuck on step 2. Implementation is one of the hardest things to do for a lot of people. And I think it's because, the first, like, yes, we can tell our minds about, you can do anything, but then when you're about to take action, you get stuck. And people wonder, okay, why is that happening? Because learning is not just in the mind, it's also the body. And that's why it's really hard. And I think what gets people stuck is they may be afraid of perhaps taking wrong action. So I wanted to ask you, how do you know whether you're taking the right action or action that may not be as effective? And how can somebody change the course if it's not as effective so that, we can give people some steps to course correct rapidly if
Mm.
that happens, so they're not so fearful of just taking that first step. And yeah, even with this event, I think we're really trying to get people to practice this implementation because that's really the hardest part. Because once you crack the step two, I think the rest kind of follows much faster and easier.
So this was not prepared, this question in advance. Like just you use okay. So how many of you have trouble can resonate, identify with what Alexis is saying? Sometimes you know what to do, but you don't do what you know. Right? That's all of us, if you're human. I would apply the 9 steps for a limitless loop towards that issue. And just like, if you keep putting things off, even more important tasks, you know what to do, but you don't do it. So let's run it through the limitless loop. I mean, there's lots of models that I talk about. I know we're going to do another live masterclass next month, which we want to invite you to also as well. Um, what's the website for that for people to enroll in this upcoming one, the one that we're going to go turn into more of a coaching than presentation?
It's jimkwik.com/workshop because this is where we're going to help people with that implementation part. And that is really the hard part. I mean, I've gotten used to it, but that's where I got stuck a lot of times. You read great books, a lot of great ideas, but you
Yeah,
don't know which one to implement. And sometimes you may be implementing something because there are a lot of sound bites on social media right now, and people are trying like a bunch of different things. But what with social media content, it misses a large chunk of the
yeah,
context of where and like when that information fits. So people may be trying things, but then it's not really relevant to where they're at. So they often don't see the results that they are looking for.
yeah.
And then they think it doesn't work or it was bad advice, but that's not true. It's just applied in the wrong time, wrong place. So I think that this workshop, we're really going to dive into more of that implementation. How do we break it down and
Allie
create?
and others are asking for the registration site again.
It's jimkwik.com/workshop. So that's
Okay,
more of a
you're good.
hands-on workshop where we're actually bringing part of Limitless Live experience.
That's right. We have two
Yeah,
guests that are
to,
speakers. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
to give people, because what we're looking to do, learning online, and you can find information everywhere. That's easy. But it's really about feeling the information. So your body has to feel it. And it all starts with taking that first initial step. So we're looking for creating more and more in-person experiences. And how do we really get people, even like virtually, how do we
Yeah.
get people hands-on doing things, doing the work? And we're going to give people the 1 day, 7 day, 30 day, 90 day blueprint of what they can do so they can start implementing little by little.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck on like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Or how do I know? How do I check myself? So that's the part I see a lot of people getting stuck in.
Okay, so go to jimkwik.com/workshop. That's where we're going to do the coaching. I will have 2 special friends that'll be speaking at Limitless Live. We haven't announced the speakers on the website. There are seats that are available, but I would lock them in sooner than later. We have Dr. Gabby Lyon, who's we're going to talk about fitness, physical fitness, and the brain. We have Sean Stevenson. We have the Guinness Book of Records fastest human calculator to help people get over their fear of numbers. As I mentioned, we have the founder and creator of MacGyver. We have Dr. Mindy Peltz to talk about fasting in the brain. We have Jamie Kern Lima. We have some new additions, Tiago Forte, who wrote The Second Brain. So if you want a memory and want to use technology to enhance it, it's going to be astonishing. We have Todd Herman, who wrote The Alter Ego Effect, which is one of my favorite books on performance. We have Max Lugavere, many of you know, talking about new things around brain health and nutrition. Jay Papasan, who wrote one of my favorite productivity performance books of all time, called The One Thing. So it's gonna be quite an experience, Limitless Live. But we're inviting 2 of them to join us to this training, special training coaching, which is different than a presentation. It's to be interactive. To answer your question, applying limitless loop towards implementation.
Mhm.
Remember, let's go through it. This would be a good, great case study. The L is learn. So learn and get curious about why we procrastinate. What is your, and I talk about this in the limitless model, right? Purpose, energy, small, simple steps. But usually it's fear, it's overwhelm, it's lack of clarity. And the science behind it is let's study the dopamine network that we have here, right? Dopamine spikes when we anticipate some kind of reward, not when we avoid discomfort. And so I would say learn about why you procrastinate. The I is implement. I have a 2 minute rule. Like if there's something I could do within 2 minutes, I just do it. And that's the small, simple steps, right? What's the tiniest action you could take right now that'll give you progress towards this goal where you can't fail? It's a myth that motivation comes before action. That's why I added the small, simple steps. You do those little, small, simple steps, you get the dopamine, which is the molecule of motivation, and then you follow through, right? But you have to commit. So, my general rule is if something takes 1 or 2 minutes, I'm just going to do it. And if that thing doesn't take 2 minutes, I ask, what is the tiniest action I could take right now that'll give me progress towards this goal that I could do in less than a minute? That'll give me that I can't fail, right? So action beats inertia every single time. You can't think your way out of this. You have to take some kind of action. The M in limitless applied towards procrastination is measure. Are you tracking your actions? Did you start? How long did you work at it? Did momentum carry you, right? Think about metrics on how you could quantify your actions. The I in limitless is imagine. So ask yourself, if I finish this now, what doors will open for me? What stresses disappear? And visualize, imagine future self with that task done. Like I visualize all the time, what does my future self want me to do right now? And I just imagine that. And I don't want to make my future self more stressed. And so that's what happens when you put things off, right? You put it into the future version of yourself and that person has to deal with it, not you in the present. So use your imagination and do a thought experiment and think about all the rewards you get, all the benefits you get from taking that action and think about if you're not sure, ask yourself, what would your future self want you to do? The T in Limitless is test. I turn things into a game often. Like if you're procrastinating on something, how can you challenge yourself, right? How can you what do they call it? Eating the frog? I think our friend Brian Tracy came up with that. Like you do the most uncomfortable thing first in your day when you have the most energy, if that's when your chronotype has the most energy, especially when you're early bird. Start one. What if you challenge yourself and tested yourself through difficulty, you grow. With challenge comes change. What if you started one dreaded task daily for a week? You created like a challenge. It's like a meta challenge. Everyone, there's challenges for everything, right? Remembering names, reading, fasting, uh, cleansing, cold plunge challenges. What if your challenge was a challenge, right? What if you took on for a week one thing that you dread, and then just remember how it feels afterwards. And that's the whole thing with delayed gratification, right? The marshmallow test. The kids that were able to not marshmallows are not a brain food, but the ones that said, hey, if you wait 15 minutes, you get more marshmallows. And then if you eat this one now, the ones that were able to delay gratification leveled up, right? They followed them throughout their life and they were happier and more successful and healthier and so on. The number seven, the E, right? Expand. So when it comes to procrastination, how can you apply anti-procrastination tools to your workouts, conversations, difficult conversations, right? I truly believe the treasure you seek is hidden in the work you're avoiding. The treasure you seek is hidden in the work you're avoiding or the conversations that you're not having. And so, in Limitless, we have all these anti-procrastination tools to be able to get yourself to read more, to have those conversations, to be able to work out. And then finally, the two S's as we round up to the top of the hour for procrastination, sustain, right? Sometimes we're procrastinate because we're burnt out. or you're exhausted, you ate a big processed meal, maybe you're not sleeping very well. Where are your energy rituals? Because exhaustion will make you a coward for anything to take on that courageous work that you need to, or conversation that you need to have. So, I'm really big into energy rituals, hydration, music, breath work before starting, right? And then the last S that we talked about was sharing. If you want to overcome procrastination and you're learning something, not doing it, then share. Teach it to your team, your family, your children, your friends. Teach them the 5 minute rule or the 2 minute rule that we talked about. I feel like accountability multiplies your success. And when the more you say it, the more you have to follow through on it. And that extra pressure or ego, whatever you want to call it, makes you more aligned, And I think authenticity is a superpower. We had this conversation with somebody in Hollywood recently, and I always believe the life you live are the lessons you teach. Think about who's counting on you if you're procrastinating. Who's counting on you to be at your A game today? And I think the result is you break the cycle of delay and you build momentum and you start looking at yourself and you start seeing the evidence that you are who you say you are, right? That you are someone who starts and finishes something and that becomes integrated. And I think that's a great example of using the 9 steps for overcoming procrastination.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to add also, whatever you're
I can't
used
drop
to.
this mic, but if I could, I would do that right now.
Mic drop moment. Yeah, and also I think just having like a realistic look at what you normally do and just do the opposite. Breaking the cycle. Speaking of breaking the cycle, what do I normally do in this situation right now? And what's the opposite of that action? And usually
Mhm.
it's just implementing, right?
Always,
So yeah.
always, always, always. I know we're at the top of the
Yes.
hour. Um, I
Yes.
just, yeah.
Speaking of breaking the cycle, and that's what we're inviting our community to do all the time. What is that one small thing that you can pick to break the cycle? And, we have this upcoming webinar where we will share the frame, not just framework, but really getting into how are we going to break this down and what does implementation look like? How are we going to take action and truly implement new habit before the event starts? So this is kind of like our preview of what people will be going through at Limitless Live. And, if you would like to join us, this will be on virtual October 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it will be pretty much what, this time that we're doing this now. And if you'd like to join us for that, that's jimkwik.com/workshop. And, that will be a 2 hour workshop session where you will be coming in. We'll have a couple of the speakers from Limitless Live really coaching you on specific area where we will go in and create a roadmap together.
And I
And
want to
that event is
stress
called,
want to stress the work and workshop because this was kind of more of a one-way conversation where I we had a lot to be able to share in a short period of time. This will be like is a coaching, which is different, right? Because we have more time and it'll be more intimate group. We're gonna go through and we'll have people on mute. We'll walk people through the process and you'll have a blueprint, especially if you're coming to Limitless Live. And I just want to thank, I know I'm speaking from the team, a number of people signed up to see us in San Diego. I can't wait. Not just for me. This is something that, we bring our families to. This is very, very personal kind of event. But I know a lot of our speakers will be doing book signings there and be there for meals and, you'd be able to, I think with the no distractions, transformation happens when we do it together. And so limitlesslive.com, absolutely can't wait. It's, yeah.
yeah, and there will be a lot of activities. We're really going to get people feel what it feels like when your mind is activated. So that, we're really excited for that. Yes, so for the workshop in October, that's jimkwik.com/workshop. If you'd like to join us for that, and limitlesslive.com. Of course, that's our San Diego event happening in December. We'd love to see you there. We have a lot of amazing stuff planned. And we had an amazing trip last week, just planning everything out, and it's absolutely amazing. So can't wait to share that with everyone. And thank you so much for joining us for this event, this webinar that we just did. I hope it was valuable. And when you can implement this limitless loop, you really will become unstoppable. So I live by this. This is something that we use every day, and can't wait for you to check it out and let us know. Let us know how it goes. Drop us comment, send us messages on social media, and we'll see you next time.
All right. VIP, stay on, please. And thank you,
Yes,
everybody.
VIP
Well,
Q&A will continue. But for the rest of us, thank you. We'll see you soon.
okay. Are we still broadcasting? Or are we
I
recording? Let's definitely record this. Can we do just how I teach, like you just need to take a quick brain break to help us sort of consolidate and someone's been sitting and not taking a bio break. Can we come back in 3 minutes and then or 3, 4 minutes and then resume?
yes.
Yes, and then we could record and do all that. Have your questions ready. This is your time. We'll definitely want to hydrate. I'm going to do some movement exercise also. And then also I have to hug my son right now because I can hear him outside. So you want to come back, Alexis? What time? And we'll do 30 minutes.
Um, let's do, yeah, for